right. So at the top, we're going to just dive into these questions. Now, we got a lot of questions, and a lot of these questions all fell within very similar or overlapping categories. So I collected these questions, and then I created questions that would basically summarize everybody's question that kind of fell within the same category, just because of the quantity that we got, and a lot of them were repetitive. And some people would ask a question, but then somebody had a related one. So I thought this would be the most efficient way to go about it. One of the most common questions that we got was questioning the official narrative that we've been all hearing from. I mean, I think the problem of this official narrative question is that a lot of these theories started trickling out early on. I would say like literally like the day after Charlie was assassinated. And so a lot of people are asking, do you believe we're getting the full story on Charlie Kirk's death? And what about loose ends like the security guard, Discord messages, or out of state cars suggesting planning? Now, there's a lot there. And what I can tell you is what we officially know. And also there's, of course, a lot of speculation. Have you seen these videos and this discourse on, and let me specify that this question I'm focusing specifically on, for example, Michael Savage did a segment where he was, he's saying something's weird, there's something else out there. And also let me point out that Michael Savage did that very shortly after, I think it was like the day after Charlie was killed or something like that. And I think the timing of that sort of thing is really important. But have you been seeing this dialogue and this conspiracy also?
I see people comment and say something feels off to me, which I'm fine with people saying that because, we have intuition and we're wanting to there's, I think, a natural reaction to want to be suspicious, especially Americans in relation to their government are we're born with it. It's like in our DNA. So I'm seeing that, but then I'm also seeing people right out the gate make statements like this was an inside job, or they're not telling us everything, or they're withholding something right away. And that I almost always dismiss out of hand immediately, because if you are accusing our country of having inside knowledge of an assassination of a political activist, that's a humongous accusation. And I feel like to just say that, within hours of something tragic like this happening says a lot about your hubris, especially if you're kind of a normal podcaster like us. I also think that people need to be cautious of that, because when everything is a conspiracy, nothing is. And so what that tells me, when it's 4 hours after he's been shot, the whole country's kind of reeling, and you're like, well, I figured it out. It's like, calm down. But I don't get rubbed the wrong way necessarily when people say something feels off to me, because things feel off to me all the time.
I think something feels off is a valid thing. Like, obviously, this is not a normal situation to be going through. My frustration is just like the immediate response, which I found it pretty immediate, where it's like, are you going to tell me that, and, fill in the blanks, like, perfect shot, had this opportunity, the security guard, by the way, I should have looked this up before, but that people have pointed out in these videos. And I think there's like a big buff guy behind him. And also I think a man with a white hat or something that people
were trying to say they're doing like hand motions,
like a signal or something like that. That is like, maybe the guy, it wasn't like he was scratching his nose, but it's like assuming that because someone scratches their nose before something happens has to be a signal. And I just think that that is a stretch. Also, I believe the man with the hat was identified as someone within Charlie's circle.
Yeah.
And being a friend. And so to make that assumption, I understand that people are trying to look for answers to things. But also, and it's totally valid, considering it's not like the government doesn't have a history of covering things up. And of
Right.
course, we all, there's the questions of RFK Jr. and John F. Kennedy and, Martin Luther King of whether or not these assassinations were inside jobs. Okay. I want to provide just like an instinctual critical thinking process here on
Mhm.
my end, and this is how I
Right.
see it. I am much more open, and you can call me naive and I don't care. I am much more open of the potential of the events during the 1960s of having been done by our government and specifically the CIA because there was so much contention at the time between the administration and
Mhm.
between the CIA and the administration against also not the administration, I'm sorry, but people within the government, the deep state against those individuals. Now,
Yeah.
that is something that a lot of people will assume in this instance too. However, the reason I find this to be very different is because in order for this to be a cover up done by who is investigating this? The FBI. So are
Mhm.
you suggesting to me that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino have come into some kind of information that would prove that some deep state entity within our government, someone who they've been railing against for years,
Mhm.
went and assassinated Charlie Kirk?
Right.
Like, that to me makes no sense. That
Mhm.
alone to me makes absolutely no sense. Now, there's a lot of questions about the information that we have been given, and a lot of it is stemming primarily from the video that was released and the images that were released after the assassination. Specifically that nobody sees the assassin with a gun on the rooftop. And let me explain something very simply, is that the information do I think we're getting everything from the FBI or from law enforcement? No, I don't. Because it would be absolutely irresponsible for the FBI, for law enforcement, for Utah law enforcement, for anyone to just dump all of the information that they have.
Well, and mind you,
Because
they're kind of damned if they do and damned if they don't because Kash Patel, I think, was a little too quick on the updating the
we have
American
this
people of what's
guy and we
happening,
have
and
this
so he just
guy.
started, like, tweeting stuff while there's an actual, like, manhunt going on, and people were railing against him, rightfully so. I didn't like that he was doing that, but people were very upset about that. So, he even got up and he said, "I'm not gonna make any apologies. I wanted to make this information available." But, he does it too fast. They're giving you not enough information. And I just think it all kind of ties in with the fact that none of us can concentrate anymore. We're in a fast media environment. We want, you know, information in 90-second snaps instead of having to read long form information. Nobody can wait and sit with an idea and sit with a thought and think it through before just blurting out whatever they think in their mind. And we expect information to just hit us like a tidal wave when something like this happens so that we can figure it out in the least amount of time. And it's just not possible. It doesn't work like
Well,
that.
not only is it not possible, but it would be irresponsible
Right.
for
Correct.
any person that's in law enforcement. In fact, I am incredibly uncomfortable, if I'm going to be honest, with the amount of information that is being shared, especially by the Utah governor. And the
Mhm.
reason for that is that it can create problems and challenges later during the prosecution of this person.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
so when you ask the question, are we getting everything? No, we're not. I can tell you that 125% not, because it would be irresponsible for that to happen. And again, these are friends or very close associates of
Mhm.
Charlie Kirk. And if
Yeah.
you think that they're covering up information because they're covering up the I don't know, like the kill or some kind of conspiracy or a coordinated event to take out Charlie Kirk. I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. I think that is absolutely ridiculous. If anything, I think it is much more likely because I like to live in the world of what is most likely that they're being cautious with the information that they give out while also walking the tightrope of giving us the information that we feel like we have a right to without damaging their case in order to prosecute this individual. okay?
Well, and think
I
about
wonder well,
I
I
was
was
gonna
gonna
I
bring
was
up,
gonna
like, a reminder that the whole Idaho murder situation with Brian Kohlberger, details about that did not come out, and a lot of people had conspiracy theories. A lot of people had conspiracy theories. But the actual details that answered most of those questions did not come out until he pled guilty, he was arraigned, or, like, until he was sentenced, okay? And all of that information was released.
Mhm,
So, slow your roll
mhm.
and calm down.
Yeah, and I also think about just the week prior with the, vicious murder of Arenya Zarutska on the light
The
rail,
light
and
yeah.
how the attorney general, I believe it was the attorney general, and the governor came out and they were being peppered with questions from the press, and continually they kept saying, we are not going to answer that right now. We're not going to answer that right now. People were very mad about some were upset about how he was going to be sentenced because they thought surely he should have a much harsher penalty and they weren't sure if the sentencing was consistent with what he had done, and what they tried to make clear is we want to create the most airtight case against him so that when we go to sentence, it will be a slam dunk. It will be sure. And if they continue to feed the details, like you were talking about in the Kohlberger case, if they continue to feed a whole bunch of details too early, or they try to over sentence, or they're not careful enough in the evidence collection and making sure that he said the things that are being purported that he said, then that could mean a detrimental outcome to his sentencing. And I think the same is going to happen here. I think that there's a lot of things they aren't telling us because they want to get this right. And I think there's extreme pressure on Bongino and on Patel. This is a very high profile case early in, this administration. I think anybody would
Investigating
be
their own
rightfully
friend.
nervous. This is their own exactly. And so
Like,
they want to get it right.